Today we're going to talk about a piece of American history that often gets overlooked, the story of America's black towns. These were communities literally built from the ground up on the promise of land, freedom, and self-determination. It's a powerful story about the American dream, what it took to build it, and the incredible fight to keep it alive.
And this quote from Ralph Page really gets to the heart of it all. This one idea, that land is wealth and wealth is power, that's the core of this entire story. For millions of newly freed African Americans after the Civil War, owning land wasn't just some economic goal. It was the very definition of freedom itself. So to really understand this movement, we need to go to a specific place, a town that became this powerful symbol of a new beginning, a little town called Nicodemus, Kansas. Think about this. Just 14 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, hundreds of black pioneers, many from Kentucky, traveled all the way west to build a life for themselves. And this wasn't just about running from the Jim Crow South. It was about running towards something. It was about grabbing a piece of the American dream, a dream that, for the very first time, felt like it was actually within reach.
Angela Bates, who's a descendant of those first settlers, she just puts it so perfectly. Nicodemus wasn't simply a collection of houses. No. It was a place where black people governed themselves, owned their own businesses, and for the first time truly controlled their own destiny. It was a vision of what America could be. But that dream came with a really harsh dose of reality. I mean, can you imagine traveling hundreds of miles just filled with hope, only to arrive on this vast, empty, treeless prairie? The first settlers, like Williana Hickman here, they actually lived in dugouts that they carved into the earth. The promise of freedom was met with the brutal day-to-day challenge of just surviving on the frontier.
But here's an amazing part of the story. They weren't entirely alone. As that first brutal winter set in and starvation was a real possibility, the local Potawatomi people found the struggling settlement. They shared food from their buffalo hunt and taught these newcomers how to survive out on the prairie. It's just this remarkable moment of solidarity between two communities, both trying to navigate a rapidly changing America.
Now, the story of Nicodemus is incredible, right? But it wasn't a one-off. Not at all. Across the country, the dream of land ownership was becoming a reality for thousands and thousands of black families, creating this powerful economic foundation just a few decades after slavery. Get this. By 1920, black Americans owned somewhere between 16 and 19 million acres of farmland. Let that sink in for a second. In just 60 years, a people who had legally been considered property had acquired a chunk of land roughly the size of West Virginia. I mean, that is a monumental achievement. But today, that number has plummeted to just 2 million acres. That's a loss of over 90%. So what happened? How did all of that wealth, all of that potential just vanish over the course of a century? Well, the answer is complex, and honestly, it's heartbreaking. It's a story of systemic barriers, sneaky legal loopholes, and just outright violence that was designed to strip that wealth away. You see, black landowners were essentially fighting a war on two fronts. On one side, you had government agencies like the USDA, which systematically denied black farmers the loans and aid that their white neighbors were getting. I mean, one former official even called the agency the last plantation. And then on the other side, you had just brutal, terrifying racial violence, a tool used to terrorize landowners and literally force them off their property. On top of all that, there was this hidden legal trap known as heirs property. So because many black families back then didn't have access to lawyers, they often died without a will. And when that happens, their land gets passed down to all their kids as tenants in common, which basically means everybody owns it together, but nobody has a clear individual title. And this created a massive vulnerability that could be exploited. A developer could find one distant relative, buy a tiny share of the land, and then take that to court and force something called a partition sale of the entire property. The land would get auctioned off, usually on the courthouse steps for pennies on the dollar, and an entire family could lose their ancestral home just like that. And when you look at the scale of the problem, it's just huge. You can see just how widespread heirs property is, especially concentrated in the South. It's become one of the single biggest causes of involuntary land loss for black families. So what's the end result of all these pressures? Well, of the hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 black towns founded with so much hope, only about 30 are still here today. It's a near total erasure of a vital piece of American history. But the story doesn't end there. It can't. In the places that managed to survive, a whole new chapter is being written. A story about reclaiming that dream and fighting for the legacy that was almost completely lost. Let's look at the data, because it really tells the story. These graphs show that steep, century-long decline. You can see it on the national level and in Kansas. That red line representing Black-owned farms, it nearly flatlines. It just nosedives through the 20th century. And for decades, that was the reality. But then, look closely at this graph for Graham County, where Nicodemus is. After all those decades of decline, something incredible starts to happen. That red line, it starts to go up. I mean, it's a dramatic reversal, a real story of hope against this backdrop of national loss. So what is going on here? How is this happening? Well, the answer comes from the descendants themselves. In 1999, they founded the Kansas Black Farmers Association, or the KBFA. This organization is a direct legacy of the town's original founders, and they're channeling that same spirit of self-determination to fight back. And this isn't just wishful thinking. They are on the ground doing the work. They have programs offering down payment assistance to help new farmers get started. They provide financial education, and they offer legal aid to help families clear up those tangled heirs' property titles. They are actively, piece by piece, rebuilding what was taken. So why does all of this matter so much today? Because the loss of land isn't just some historical footnote. Researchers estimate that the value of the acreage lost by Black farmers is worth at least $326 billion in today's money. That's not just lost land. That is lost generational wealth, a key reason for the racial wealth gap that we still see today. And that kind of leaves us with this final thought. The fight to save places like Nicodemus, it's not just about preserving old buildings. It's about understanding a history that directly shaped our present. And, through the work of groups like the KBFA, it's about investing in a more equitable future. It really asks all of us to think about what it means to reclaim a dream.